Data extraction from single source system into multiple targets using process chains. We're going to use the source system as a flat file and the targets are InfoCube and DSO. Let's see what are the steps it's involved in this example. Know the path for SAP work directory, create a flat file and log on to SAP BI, check for source system, create info objects, create data source for transaction data, create standard DSO, create standard InfoCube, create transformation for InfoCube, and create info package, and do not start it, just save it. Create DTPs for both of targets and do not execute it. And finally create a process chains and check it out the data flow in the process chains. Now our first step is we need to find out what is a work directory for the SAP system. So for that we have to enter the transaction code AL11, press enter. It will take you to SAP directories screen. Here under the name of the directory parameter you need to find out the directory called dir underscore home. So the path is going to be d/user/sap/dev dvebmgsoo/work. So this is where the database SAP the working directory, that is called home directory, is located. So we need to find out this directory and where you have to save your flat files under these directories since we are using the process chains. So let's find out your flat files and store it. Okay, so now I'm just opening this d user sap dev dvebmgsoo. Open it. This is a work directory. So if you open this is where your transaction files are stored. If you want you can sort it by the file types where it will display a lot of files. So these are the files, these are the flat files stored under your SAP work directory. So I have a couple of transaction flat files are available under this directory. Let's use these flat files for our example. Okay, so now go back to your SAP BI system. So we need to check for the source system connectivity. So what is the transaction code for this? RSA13. Press enter. So this is where your source system is available. So we are using our source system as a flat file, so we need to check it out. So what is our source system? So this is our source system here. Okay, if you go to the data source, okay, under choose systems we have to select the file and your source system name. Come back to here and right click on your source system, select check. So the connection is okay for our source system. So our source system is fine now. Though what is the next step here? We have to create the info objects for our flat files. So select the info objects under modeling. Okay, so we have to create here the application component, sorry, for the info area here. So let's create info area. So I'm creating info area for class 24. This is for the extraction from single source system into multiple targets. This is the purpose of my info area. So once you've done this creation, so what is our next step? We have to create the info objects here. So select your info area, right click. Under the context menu, you have to select create info object catalog. So the first purpose is we have to create the characteristics and key figure. We have two different info objects types. Let's create first the master data, and then we have to create the transaction data, right? So we have an option here. Without the master data, of course we can create it a transaction data, but this is not the good practice here. So always the transaction data should be linked with your master data in a real time. So let's create the master data first, then we'll go ahead for the transaction data creation. Okay, so I'm creating here SID underscore. This is my info object catalog. So let's create info object for SID. What is the info area? It's a 24, right? So my SID is going to be 24. So this is my characteristics info object catalog for salesman ID, and the info object type is going to be character, and the system type namespace, this is a customer generated, that is generated by us. So we have to select this option by pressing the enter button in your keyboard. Press enter, it will be selected automatically. Now click on create. So we are creating a characteristic info object catalog for your master data. So let's activate it. So now your info object catalog for the characteristics has been activated. Now let's move to creating the info objects under this catalog. So select your catalog of characteristic, right click and select create info object. So what is my info object here? Salesman ID. Okay, salesman ID, press enter. So it's going to be characteristics and length is going to be 4 characters, and I don't want to create text data tables for this characteristics, so uncheck this option, and I have to create attributes for this. Select the attributes tab. Now let's create attributes for this salesman ID. So salesman name is required. Salesman name, the data type is going to be characteristics and 10. Press enter. Then salesman age, it's going to be numerics 2 digits. Press enter. Salesman address, it's going to be data type characteristics. Enter 10 or characteristics length. Then salesman phone, and data type is going to be numeric and length should be 10 digits. So once you're done entering the attributes, let's move to activate this info object. So we are creating the attributes under the info object of salesman ID. Let's activate. Let it be activate independent info objects. Say OK for this. Okay, now our info object has been activated. So what is the next step here? We have to load the master data to these info objects, right? So for that, what is we have to do here? We have to create a data source. Select your data source, okay, and the root node, right click on it, create an application component. This is my application component for my SID 24. So what we're doing, extracting extracting data from single source system to multiple targets. Okay, now I have created my application component. So if you observe that this, if you create an application component, the prefix Z will be automatically added here. So we call this this is a namespace. So now right click your application component and we have to create a data source. So select data source. So I'm creating a data source for master data, right? So that is my master data source, going to be 24. And what is your data type? Master data attributes. Select it, continue. So enter some description here, data source for master data SID 24. Under extraction, I am selecting this file from my desktop because it's going to be master data. Okay, master data attributes. Header rows to be ignored 1. Data format is CSV. Data separator, comma. Click on proposal tab. Click on load example data. So we got the data and the fields here. So now I need to map the fields with my flat file. So this is a flat file fields is available in my Excel sheet, and these are the info objects which have been created. So what I'm doing here, I'm mapping with my fields with my info objects. The flat files, the Excel sheet fields with my info object which has been created just a few minutes back. So here salesman ID is 24 and 24. Say copy first time. Say S name 24 here for salesman name. SH 24. Address SADDR 24. Phone SPHONE 24. So I have mapped these fields, the flat file fields, with my info object which has been created. So now the data flow from the field to field here. So the data will be mapping which field it has to go and store. This is what we are doing here. Now click on the preview. Before pressing the read preview data, so we have to activate this data source. Click on the activate. It will create a PSA table /BIC/B0000378. So my data source is activated now. So I'm clicking read preview data. So the data has been connected here. Still it has not been loaded. We are just created connection in between my source system to my BW system. Okay, so that this is a way how you create a connection in between these two source system to your BW system. Now what is the next step? We have to create a target for this master data. So the data will be transferred from your source system to your BW system. So let's move to the next step. So I have created a data source for this. So I am going to info provider. Since it is a master data, my data target would be my info object. So select your info area, right click, select insert characteristic as info provider, enter your primary key, that is your salesman ID. So once you observe here, it comes along with your attributes. So this is how I'm making my info object characteristic as a data target. So now what I have to do, the next step is going to be create a transformation. Select the attributes option here, then select transformation, create a transformation. So object type is going to be info object and name is this, and subject type is going to be attributes. And what is your object type here? That is going to be data source, and my data source name is going to be ds underscore mdsid24, and source system is PC. Now click on continue. So I'm creating a transformation here. So here the fields will be mapping automatically, since we have done this mapping in the while you're creating a data source. If you don't create there, you have to do manually here. Okay, now the transformation has been created. Let's activate it. So my transformation is activated successfully. Now what is the next step? Go to your data source, and if you observe here, you don't have this arrow mark here. Once you click on refresh, then it will create an arrow mark where you can find out your transformation under data flow upwards. This is what the transformation we have created in the info provider. Now what we have to do here, we need to create a info package. So select info package by clicking on your data source system, right click on it, select create info package. So let's create info package for your master data system for SID 24, and this is my data source system. Okay, now you need to check it out, the proper information is available here or not. Please double check the file name. By default it will be selected automatically under the it will pull out the information from your source system, data source system. So once recheck this, if everything is okay, now move to your schedule and click on the start. So now the data will be moved from your source system to PSA table, that is persistent staging area. Now the data will be available under SAP BW system. So how do I find out this? Click on your monitor icon. You can check here, the request has been fetched, the number of records it will display here. Select the request here. You can check it out whether it's a successful or not here. Now click on PSA maintenance. Under PSA maintenance it will display how many records. This is your data package. For one package, how many records it has been fetched. Since we have only 10 records available, so it's displaying 10 records. Now click on continue. Now you can check, this is your master data fetched from your source system into SAP BW. Now the data is available in SAP BW. So what I need to do now, I need to move this data to the target. So what is my data target here? That's info object, right? So let's move the data to the target. So what is the next step? If you observe here, this info package has been created, but it's grayed out. So how do I make this active? Just click on refresh. You can check it out. Now this is active. So what I have to do next, select your data source system. You have to create a data transfer process. So this process will move the data from your PSA to your data target, which is your info object in this case, right? So you need to do nothing here. Everything will be selected by automatically. Just click on continue. Once you done this continue, it will take you to your data transfer process window. So the extraction mode is going to be full upload. So we are not doing any delta upload here, which already discussed this in a previous classes. So what I'm doing here, I'm clicking on the full upload. For in this case of my example, select your update, check it out, anything need to be changed here, click on executive. So if you want to press this button, we have to activate this data transfer process, which is called DTP. Once you activate this, the button will be available for you to execute. So now click on execute button. The data will be moved from your PSA tables to your data target, which is your info object catalog, info object. So now the data has been moved successfully. You can observe here the data package is the 10 records has been selected here. So how do I check it out? The data is available in my data target or not? So you have an option called administer data target. Click on this button. You can check it out, this request ID. This is a request created to fetch the data from PSA to my data target, and this button will show you the request is available for reporting. It means that the data whatever is available in my data target, it is available for reporting for the BEX. Okay, and this is a green means successful, the data is loaded successful, and you can monitor in case if you required it. And this is your DTP info package name. Okay, and number of records has been transferred 10, and number of records added is 10. So what is the type of data? It's a full update. So now how do I check the data available in my target? Select your data target, click on contents icon. Okay, now click on execute. So the data is available under my data target. So I have loaded master data successfully into SAP BW system from flat file. So what is our next step? We have to load the transaction data from the flat files into multiple targets. What are our targets here? Our targets are InfoCube and DSO, right? Let's create a next step. So to load the transaction data from the flat files to your data targets, we have already created a transaction data flat file into our SAP work directory, which we have been checked it out in the first step by entering the transaction code AL11. Okay, so our transaction files, flat files, transaction data flat files are available under SAP work directory. So what is our step here? We have to create info objects, right? So what is a transaction code? RSA 14, press enter. So now we are creating a info objects. So select your info area. So we have a characteristics info object catalog. So now we are creating key figure info object catalog for SID 24. This is going to be your key figure info object catalog for SID 24. So this is created by again user, that means you, press enter. Okay, so info object catalog SID 24 is already created. So let's make it key figure. Now press enter. This is a customer generated or user generated, it's you. Let's activate this info object catalog. Now I have to create a info object for my transaction data. Select your catalog, right click, select create info object. So let's create the key figures info objects. So what are the key figure info objects for me? Quantity, press enter. So this is going to be quantity, and the unit occurrence it's going to be 0 units, 0 unit. Okay, click on activate. Fine. Now click on the create again. So what I need to create here, this is going to be (24) sales revenue. So the sales amount, it should be data type amount. Select amount and press the unit or currency. So what is the key figure here? 0 currency. Press enter this. Activate. Let's create one more. P profit 24. Sales profit. Again it's going to be amount, data type 0 currency. Activate. Okay, so these are the key figures required for my transaction data. Click on F3 back. So I forgot to create FID, that's my product ID for info object catalog. Click on this, create a characteristics again. This is going to be PID 24, that is going to be product ID. Press enter. This is going to be data type character, and for the length of data type I don't want to create any text. Okay, no attributes for this. Let's move and activate this. So I'm creating this product ID under the info object characteristics catalog. So this is my product ID. So F3 back. So I have completed creation of my transaction data, info objects, quantity, sales and profit. So these are the 3 objects required for my transaction data. So what I have to do now, I need to create a data source for my transaction data, right? Let's select the data source. This is a application component we have created for the master data. You can use the same application component for your transaction data source. Let's create a data source for the transaction data for my SID 24, and my source type is going to be transaction data. Continue. Enter the description here, data source for transaction data SID 24. This is your short description, medium and long. Under extraction, please remember here we are using a process chains to load the data to the data targets. So my adapter would be load text type file from application server. Please remember this. You have to select this option. We are not loading the flat file from your desktop. Our flat files for the transaction data are available under the SAP work directory. So now click on browse and select your flat file. Once you click on this one, you get in a pop-up screen where the AL11 files button is available, because we are loading the flat file from application server. Click on this button. So what is my directory name? dir_home. Double click on it. So where is my transaction data? This is my transaction data. Double click on it. Select copy the name. So now the path is available here. So again, rest of all same. Header rows ignored one, and the format type is going to be CSV. Now move to proposal. Load the data. Okay. So the data is whatever the data fields and everything will be displayed here. Select the fields which we are mapping the fields here with my info objects SID 24. Select do not show this and copy the first tab and say PID 24. This is a quantity 24. This is my info objects. So the unit reference field unit was added automatically. So check it out here. I have a 2 units fields. One is an extra, so which I don't want this units. Let's delete this. P-sales, profit 24, and the currency is going to be 0. currency, and my date of transaction is going to be 0 cal day. So these are the fields which I have been mapped with my flat file fields. So once it's done, what we have to do before checking the preview of data, I need to activate my data source. Click on activate, say continue. Once your data source is activated, now click on read preview data. So we have created a data source for my transaction data, right? So now the system generates a transaction structure and PSA table for this data source. So now what is the next step? We have to create a standard DSO, right? So we have a multiple data targets. One is DSO, another one InfoCube. Click on F3, go to back, click on your info provider, refresh it. So select your info area, right click on it and select the option called create data store object. This is your DSO and I'm creating here a standard DSO, right? So select this. Once you selected create DSO, you have to create the data store name. This is standard DSO. What is my SID? 24, right? So standard DSO for transaction data loading for SID 24 and press enter. Make sure that it is generated by you. Click on create. Now the show hide navigation, make sure that you get the full screen here. This is my structure of DSO. Okay, so I have here the folders here, key fields and the data fields. So the key fields store the characters and data fields store the key figures. So now let's assign some characteristics for here. This is my characteristic info object catalog. So under the key fields, I'm moving this, drag and drop your product ID and your salesman ID. Okay, so now let's again select the key figure info object catalog, move all your key figures to data fields. So by default automatically currency and unit of measures will follow the key figures wherever we have mapped with it. So I have assigned this key figures and data fields. Now if you expand your navigation attributes, it doesn't have any fields because we have not created any navigation attributes. We haven't created anything here. Okay, at the time of your attribution creation, if you select this as the navigation attributes there in your info object creation time, then it will display here. Unless until if you don't select there, it won't display any navigation attributes. So it's showing the blank here. So now move to settings folder, expand it. You can check it out. This is my data store object type. My DSO is going to be standard DSO here. Okay, and SID generation upon the activation. So this SID generation upon the activation is going to be during the activation here, and the quality and automatically save the data. You check it out, depends on your requirement. You can select it here. Once you done, all this required objects has been moved properly into respected folders. Then what next step? Activate it. So we are activating your data store object DSO. So system is generating some DSO tables here. So my DSO has been activated. So this DSO has been the system has been generated some tables for DSO. So if you want to check it out, what are the tables has been created, so click on this extra menu, select informations and select dictionary or database status. you can check it out. This is your active table slash BIC ASDSO. This is my DSO name. Okay, so A means active, and change log table, that is a B0000381000, and activation queue BIC slash ASDSO24 and the 40. This is my activation queue table. So the system generated 3 different tables: active table, change log table, activation queue. Okay, I have created my DSO. So what is my next target? The next step is going to be, I have to create the InfoCube. Enter the name of standard InfoCube, creating for SID 24. The InfoCube, the type is standard InfoCube here, and it is going to be generated by us. Press enter. You will get the, click on create. So now let's assign the info objects to the folders. Before assigning the info object, let's create the dimension folders. Let's create first the dimension folder. Before that, let's rename for the default dimension here. Click on the properties. So we are renaming this dimension as a for product dimension, to assign the product info object here. And let's create one more dimension for sales. This is my sales dimension. I have a product and sales. Select your sales dimension, and now we're going to assign the info objects to this dimension. Let's open your characteristics info object catalog, expand the characteristics folder. Now drag and drop the salesman ID of info object into the sales dimension, then product into product dimension, expand it. And we don't have any navigation attributes because we have not created at the time of info object creations. We haven't created any navigational attributes. Okay, now let's assign the key figure. Open your key figures info object catalog, expand the key figures folder, select your key figures, drag and drop into your key figures folder. Okay, and if you check it out, unit folder, you have already currency and unit of measures will be followed automatically along with your key figures. And for the time, it won't display the calendar date, so we have to assign this. Right click on this times the dimension, then select your info object input, then type 0 cal day, and if you want a date, month, year and week, you have to assign all the things like 0 cal week, 0 cal year. Okay, and if you want month, 0 cal month. Continue. So I have assigned us the time objects. Once you're done assigning the info objects, check it out your InfoCube properly, then go ahead and activate it. Once you start activating, system generates the facts and dimensions table. So your InfoCube has been activated. So once it has been activated, and if you want to check it out, what are the tables has been created here, click on extras menu, information, dictionary or DB status. These are the tables has been created by your InfoCube. This is a fact table, fact table, and this is your packet, time, unit, and these are the two dimensionals which you have been created, one for sales, another one for product. Go back. So now our both targets are ready, so we have to move the data to these two targets. So what we have to do, next step is create a transformation. Let's select your InfoCube, right click and select create transformation, and your object type is going to be InfoCube, and this is your InfoCube name. And what is your object type here? Your object type is going to be your data source, right? Select your data source, and what is your data source name here? ds underscore ted sid 24, and source system is PC. Click on OK. So this is your transformation for your InfoCube. Please check it out. It has been automatically mapped except this calendar day. So let's map to the calendar fields. This is your info objects in your InfoCube. So once you've done this, what you have to do, you have to activate your transformation. Click on activate. So your transformation has been created. Now we are activating your transformation. So it is activated successfully. Go back. Let's create a transformation for your DSO. Right click on DSO and select create transformation. Once you've done the create transformation, check it out what is your object type and what is the name, and select the data source here. Again the same data source here, ds underscore td sid 24, and your source system. Say OK for this. So once you create the transformation, check it out the fields has been assigned or mapped properly, then go ahead for activation. So you will get a message here for zero record mode is going to be maintained here. Click on continue. Okay, your transformation is activated successfully. Go back and select your DSO. Check it out the data flow. This is a data flow for your DSO. In similar way, we can check the data flow for your InfoCube. Select your InfoCube, right click, display data flow, continue. Close this and you can check it out your info area data flow as well. And so we have checked out the DSO data flow and your InfoCube data flow. So if you want to check it out your info area data flow, select your info area, right click and say display data flow, continue. So it shows your info area data flow. This is your source system, and we have created a data source for transaction data and master data. And for the master data, the target is going to be your info object, salesman ID info object. This is your target. For the transaction data, we have two different targets, one InfoCube, another one DSO. So this is your data flow for info area. Close this. So now we have both targets here. So let's create an info package for these targets. We have to move the data from your source system to your targets, right? Select your data sources and refresh. Okay, now select your data source for the transaction data, right click and create info package. Now let's enter the description for your info package. This info package is going to be creating for the data source, info package for data source transaction data SID 24. Select your data source, click on save. Okay, so we have created an info package for our data source. Do not click on start button, simply save this. Okay, and if you check it out, the data is available or not. So there is no data selected here. If you go to the monitor, so go back, so click on the refresh. It is not activated still. Click on refresh. Now it is inactive. So we have created info package. The next step is going to be create a DTP for your data targets. Select your info provider and expand your info area and select your InfoCube. This is one of your data target. Expand it and select your DTP folder. Right click on create data transfer and check it out. This is going to be a standard DTP. Continue. Click on the extractions tab, select full upload, go to execute tab. Here execute button is not activated, so activate your DTP. So once it is activated, do not click on execute button. We are not doing manual process. Since we are using a process chain for loading the data, we don't need to click on the execute button here. Save it back and take your DTP, copy it, your DTP name, paste in a notepad. This is InfoCube DTP. Right, and now let's create a DTP for your DSO. Expand your DSO, select your DTP folder, right click, create DTP, continue, extraction tab, extraction mode, full, execute tab, activate. Once it's activated, do not click on execute button here. Save it and go back and click on your DTP name, copy it, paste in the notepad. This is your DSO DTP. Right, so we have created info package and data transfer process for both of the data targets. Okay, but we have not loaded the data here, so we need to create a process chain for loading the data to these two targets. Let's create a process chain. Enter the transaction code RSPC, press enter. Expand your process chain folder, right click on it, select create process chain. Create a process chain here, process chain for SID 24. Continue. You need to create a start process here. Click on create. It will ask you to create a variant here, process variant. So this is a process variant for your start process, right? Process variant for start process. Press enter. It will take you to the maintain start process. Click on change selections and you have to start immediately loading the data. So click on immediate button. Otherwise you have a plan to load the data into the schedule based. Click on date and time, or depends on your requirement here. Click on save. Save again. Go back. Click on continue. It will create a start process for you. This is your start process. So once you created the start process, we have to load the load process. So for the loading process, what we required the info packages and DTPs, right? So we have to execute your info package here. Before that, we have to copy your info package ID, right? So what I'm doing, open a new session here. Select your info package technical name here. So going to your data source, This is my data source, this is my info package. Copy it and paste it in a notepad. This is my info package technical name. Okay, come back to your process chain screen and select execute info package. Under execute info package, enter your info package name here, click on create. Okay, so here this is your info package. So once you type this info package, so you're not supposed to click on the create, go back, say no, we have to click on the continue. So once you click on the continue button, so it will ask you to select what is your DTP here. So what is my DTP here? I have two different types of DTPs are available here, one for InfoCube, another one for DSO, right? Okay, now let's select a DTP for your DSO. Click on continue. So I got this, the load process, and for info package here, and this is a DTP for DSO, and this is my activating data source. This is my DSO. This is the process of my info package and DTP. So we need to create one more DTP for your InfoCube, right? So look for your DTP here, double click on it and select a DTP for your InfoCube, copy, paste it here, then click on this. So I got my InfoCube DTP here. Okay, so let's arrange this one. Before this we have to create the indexes for this, right? Okay, let's create the indexes for this. Click on generate index, create a process variant for generate index for SID 24, process variant for generate index. Click on OK. So what is a object for my object type is going to be InfoCube. Okay, select your InfoCube. My InfoCube is going to be SID 24, right? Click on save, go back, continue. So it's created a delete index and create index for the InfoCube. Okay, now let's rearrange all these things. So remove the link for this indexes and move this little down and keep it start process first and connect start process to the load data. Okay, and from load data to, it's already connected to DSO, let's connect it to InfoCube. Okay, and I have here active data DSO. Let's keep this create index for this, successful. Okay, before load data, remove this InfoCube. I need to keep my delete index. So connect to this and connect to this. Okay, now rearrange. So start process, delete index, load data to DSO and InfoCube. InfoCube has a create index and DSO has a activating data source. This is my process chain here. Okay, now let's activate and schedule standard priority C and check it out, the log view. Refresh, it's moving from start to indexes. Refresh, it's green means it's activated, successful. It came to load data, then load data to going to the target. Refresh, keep refreshing. So now it's moved to InfoCube. The data has been moved to InfoCube. Sorry, the data has been moved to DSO here. Now the data moved to InfoCube here. InfoCube to create indexes happen here. Okay, now it's the DSO also activated the DSO. So now your process chain is successful. Refresh this, go back here, open your process chain and check it out the log. The log is successful now. The data has been moved. If you want to check it out whether the data has moved or not, select your info package, double click on it, or what you can do, you can right click on this and say the process monitor. So the data has moved 20 records here. Click on the PSA maintenance, you have 20 records here. Continue. So I got my transaction data here under PSA. Okay, now check it out your DTP. For DSO administer target, you can check it out. This is a request is available, and we have it has moved 20, it has transferred 20 records, added 10 records here. Select your DSO table contents, field selection for output, execute. The data moved to DSO here. Now let's check the data in the InfoCube. Right click, administer target, transfer 20 records, added 10 records, summarize the data here. Select your InfoCube contents, field selection for output, select the required field, execute. The data moved to InfoCube. So now the data is available in the data targets. So our aim was loading the data from the flat files from single source system to multiple data targets. So this is two different targets. I have two multiple targets. I have moved the data from one source system to two different targets. This is my example which has been successful. Thank you.